Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's relaxing session. Before we begin, I'd love to hear from you. What's the most memorable bedtime or interesting story you've ever heard? Share it in the comments, it might help someone unwind tonight. Now get comfortable, relax, and enjoy these calming stories. My boyfriend of 7 years cheated on me, and I am planning to disappear from his life, and I need to know if I am missing anything. I am a 27-year-old woman, and I have been with my boyfriend Aaron for 7 years. We met when I was 20, and he was 22 at a mutual friend's house party in Columbus, Ohio. His roommate at the time was a guy named Lucas, who was dating my coworker Brianna, so we kept running into each other. What started as something casual turned into a long-term relationship that slowly became the backbone of my adult life. Aaron was there when I finished college, when my dad Mark had his heart surgery, when I switched jobs twice, and finally landed where I am now. We have lived together for 5 years in 2 different apartments, and for most of that time, I genuinely believed we were solid. We were not perfect. We argued about chores and money, and the fact that Aaron has a habit of shutting down instead of talking things through. I am the opposite, and I want to process everything immediately. Still, I thought we balanced each other. Marriage came up occasionally, and it was always framed as a when, not an if. He talked about proposing once he felt more stable at work. I believed him because I trusted him completely. 3 weeks ago, that trust collapsed in a way that feels almost unreal even now. I was not snooping or suspicious. Aaron left his Apple Watch on the kitchen counter while he showered because it was charging. A message came through, and I glanced at it out of reflex because it buzzed loudly. It was from a contact named Jenna with a heart emoji. The preview said, "I miss you already last night," was amazing. I felt my stomach drop so hard, I thought I might throw up. I stood there staring at the watch like it was something dangerous. I know some people would say I should have respected his privacy, but in that moment, my body moved before my brain caught up. I tapped the message. What I saw confirmed everything I was afraid of and more. There were weeks of messages, flirty at first and then explicit. They talked about meeting at a hotel near her work. They joked about how he hated lying to me, but that he was not ready to blow up his life yet. When Aaron came out of the shower, I was sitting at the table with the watch in front of me. I asked him who Jenna was. He froze. Not confused, not angry, just caught. He tried to say she was a coworker, then a friend, then finally admitted she was someone he had been seeing for a few months. Her name is Jenna Collins, and she works in marketing at a firm his company partners with. She is 31 and divorced. He said it like those details were supposed to make it make sense. I asked him how long. He said about 4 months. I asked if he loved her. He said no, but that he cared about her. I asked if he planned to tell me. He said he did not know. Every answer felt like another small cut. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I felt very calm in a way that scared me. I told him I needed space, and I went to my sister Emily's apartment that night. Emily is 32 and lives about 20 minutes away with her husband Daniel. She took one look at me and knew something was wrong. I told her everything and cried harder than I have in years. Since that night, Aaron has sent dozens of messages and emails. He apologized. He said he made a huge mistake. He said he would cut off Jenna immediately. He said he would go to therapy, couples counseling, anything. His mom Susan even called me, which felt wildly inappropriate but also sad. She said I was like a daughter to her and that Aaron was an idiot. I did not answer her call. I did not respond to Aaron either. Here's the part that people might find extreme. I am not planning to confront him further or have a dramatic breakup conversation. I am planning to disappear from his life as completely and cleanly as possible. I already spoke to my manager Rachel and arranged to work remotely for a few weeks. I am taking my savings and staying with my friend Natalie in Portland for a month. Natalie and I have known each other since high school, and she has a spare room. After that, I plan to move to a different city entirely. I have been offered a position with my company's Denver office in the past, and I am going to ask if that is still on the table. I went back to the apartment once while Aaron was at work to pack my essentials. I took my clothes, important documents, my laptop, and the few items that are truly sentimental, like my grandmother Helen's necklace. I left the furniture and most of the shared items. The lease is in both our names, and I know I will have to deal with that legally, which is one of the reasons I am posting. I left him a short letter on the counter. It said, "I know everything. I am done. Please do not contact me again. I will communicate about logistics through email only." Part of me feels empowered by this plan. I do not want closure conversations where he tries to explain or minimize or cry. I do not want to be talked into staying. I know myself, and I know that if I sit across from him and see the version of him I loved for 7 years, I might fold. Disappearing feels like the only way to protect myself. Another part of me wonders if I am making a mistake by not addressing everything directly. Am I avoiding necessary steps that will come back to bite me later? I have already changed my passwords and removed him from my emergency contacts. I froze my credit just in case because I have read too many horror stories. I am planning to send a formal email about the lease and utilities once I am out of state. The apartment complex manager is a woman named Karen Lewis, and I plan to contact her about removing myself from the lease or paying a termination fee. I keep replaying the last 7 years in my head and looking for signs I missed. There were late nights at work, sudden interest in dressing nicer, a period where he seemed distant and irritable. At the time, I chalked it up to stress. Now it all looks different. I feel stupid for not seeing it, but I also know that trust is not stupidity. I have not told many people yet. My parents Linda and Robert know, and they are furious on my behalf. My mom wants me to confront him and demand answers. My dad wants to help me move my stuff out completely and is already talking about small claims court. My best friend Kayla thinks disappearing is powerful and that I do not owe Aaron anything. Emily is supportive but worried that I am running instead of healing. I am not asking if I should forgive him. That is not on the table. I am asking if there is anything practical or emotional that I might be missing by choosing this route. Legal issues with the lease. Shared finances we never fully combined, but did split bills through a joint checking account that I have already emptied of my contributions. Social fallout with mutual friends like Lucas and Brianna, who might pressure me to talk to him. Future regret about not saying everything I want to say. Right now I feel hollow and strangely calm. I know the grief will hit me later. I just want to make sure that while I am protecting my heart, I am not setting myself up for unnecessary problems down the road. I am open to advice from people who have walked away like this before or who wish they had handled things differently. I am trying to choose myself for the first time in a long time, and I want to do it right. Update. My boyfriend of 7 years cheated on me, and I am planning to disappear from his life, and I need to know if I am missing anything. I did not expect to come back this soon, but a lot has happened, and I feel like I am finally steady enough to write it out. I read every comment before I left Ohio, and some of them genuinely saved me from making things harder for myself. I am writing this from Portland, sitting at Natalie's kitchen table while she is at work, and the rain is tapping against the window in a way that feels strangely comforting. I left 2 days after I originally posted. I did not tell Aaron when I was going or where I was going. I blocked his number, but left email open like I said I would. That turned out to be a good decision, even though it still sucked. Within hours of me landing, I had several long emails from him. They ranged from apologetic to desperate to oddly angry. One of them accused me of being cruel for leaving without talking. Another said he understood why I needed space and that he would wait as long as it took. I did not respond to any of them. I forwarded them to a separate folder and have not opened one since the first day. Before I left, I did one more thing people suggested. I documented everything. I took photos of the apartment, screenshots of the messages between Aaron and Jenna that I had taken earlier, copies of our lease, utility bills, and the balance of the joint account before I withdrew my share. I felt paranoid doing it, but that paranoia paid off later. 3 days after I arrived in Portland, I got an email from the property manager, Karen. Aaron had gone to the leasing office claiming I abandoned the apartment and that he could not afford it alone. He asked them to come after me for the full rent and damages. Karen's email was neutral but firm, asking me to clarify my intentions. I replied calmly and attached the documentation. I explained that I did not abandon the lease, that I was willing to pay my portion or discuss a lease termination, and that communication should be in writing. I also mentioned that the breakup was due to infidelity and that I left for personal safety and mental health reasons. I do not know if that last part mattered legally, but it mattered to me. Karen replied the next day and said the complex would allow us to break the lease early with a standard termination fee and 60 days notice. Aaron would have the option to take over the lease alone if he qualified financially. I agreed to pay my half of the termination fee and my portion of rent for those 60 days. It hurt to spend that money, but the relief of having a clear end date was worth it. Aaron did not like that outcome. He sent another email accusing me of punishing him financially and emotionally. He said I was acting like he was abusive when he just made a mistake. That was the moment something shifted in me. The guilt I had been carrying loosened its grip. I replied once and only once. I told him I was handling things fairly and legally, that cheating for months is not a mistake but a series of choices, and that I would not engage in emotional arguments. I reiterated that all communication should stay about logistics. He did not reply after that. The social fallout was messier than I hoped, but not as bad as I feared. Lucas texted me asking what happened because Aaron told him I left out of nowhere and refused to talk. I told Lucas the truth without sharing screenshots. He believed me immediately and apologized for even questioning it. Brianna reached out too and said she had suspected something was off but did not know what. She said Jenna had been mentioned casually at a work happy hour once, and she felt sick realizing what that meant now. Apparently that information made its way back to Aaron, and he was furious. I heard through Emily that he blamed me for ruining his reputation. That made me laugh in a tired, hollow way. Being in Portland has been both harder and easier than I expected. Harder because the quiet gives my brain too much room to replay memories. Easier because I am not constantly bracing myself for his presence. Natalie has been incredible. She does not push me to talk, but listens when I do. She also gently calls me out when I start romanticizing the past. She reminds me of nights I cried because Aaron dismissed my feelings or made me feel like I was too much. I forgot about those moments when I was focused on the good ones. I also found out something that sealed my resolve even further. Jenna emailed me. I do not know how she got my address, but she wrote a long message apologizing and saying she did not know Aaron and I were still together when things started. That might have been true at first, but she admitted she knew later and stayed anyway because Aaron told her we were basically over. She said he was now telling her that I was unstable and ran away without explanation. Reading that email made my hands shake, but it also made everything clear. The version of events he was spreading depended on painting me as unreasonable. That is not someone I can ever trust again. I did not reply to her. I forwarded the email to my archive and blocked her address. I am done participating in their narrative. As for me, I accepted the Denver position. I will be moving there permanently in 6 weeks. My company was supportive in a way that surprised me, and my manager Rachel told me she admired how I handled everything. I found a small apartment near downtown and signed the lease yesterday. It felt surreal and terrifying and empowering all at once. I bought a cheap couch and a plant and cried in the empty living room because it was the first space that was completely mine. Emotionally, I am not healed. I still wake up some mornings expecting a text from Aaron about something mundane like forgetting to buy coffee filters. Then the reality hits again. Some days I feel strong, and other days I feel like I lost 7 years of my life. But I no longer feel like disappearing was about running away. It was about choosing not to be dragged into chaos that I did not create. For anyone worried that I would regret not having one last conversation, I can honestly say I do not. Every new piece of information I learn confirms that the man I thought I needed closure from does not exist anymore, or maybe never did. Closure came from my actions, not his explanations. I am still paying my share of the lease until it officially ends, and then that chapter is closed. I am slowly telling people my story on my own terms. I am learning how to sit with discomfort instead of fixing it immediately. Most importantly, I am learning that walking away quietly can be just as powerful as slamming a door. Final update. My boyfriend of 7 years cheated on me, and I am planning to disappear from his life, and I need to know if I am missing anything. This will be my last post about this because I feel like the chapter is finally closed in a real way. I am writing this from my new apartment in Denver. There are boxes still stacked in corners, and my mattress is on the floor. But it already feels more like home than the place I shared with Aaron ever did. The lease in Ohio officially ended last week. I paid my final portion of rent and the termination fee and received written confirmation from the property management that my name is no longer attached to anything. When that email came through, I sat there staring at it for a long time. I did not realize how much tension I had been carrying in my body until it released all at once. I slept better that night than I had in months. Aaron tried one last time to reach out right before the lease ended. It was an email that started calm and reasonable and slowly unraveled. He said he felt erased, that 7 years deserved more than silence, that he was struggling and did not recognize his life anymore. He said Jenna was no longer in the picture and that losing me made him realize what he really wanted. I read it once and did not reply. I did not feel angry. I did not feel tempted. I mostly felt sad for the version of him that still believed access to me was something he was entitled to. I later learned through Lucas that Aaron moved out of the apartment and back in with his parents Susan and Michael for now. Apparently that has been rough for him, and he has been complaining to mutual friends about how unfair everything turned out. Most of those friends quietly drifted away, not because I asked them to, but because patterns became clearer once I was gone. Lucas told me something that stuck with me. He said when people stop absorbing the shockwaves from someone else's bad choices, those choices finally land where they belong. Denver has been good to me in small, steady ways. My new job role is challenging and distracting in the best sense. I am learning new systems, meeting new people, and building a routine that does not revolve around anyone else's moods or needs. My neighbor across the hall is a woman named Tessa, who is around my age and recently divorced. We bonded over borrowed tools and late-night takeout. She told me on our second conversation that leaving was the hardest thing she ever did and the best decision she ever made. I did not tell her my whole story, but I understood exactly what she meant. Emotionally, I have gone through waves. There was a delayed anger phase that surprised me. Not explosive rage, but a slow burn, when I realized how much emotional labor I had done in that relationship while Aaron quietly opted out. There was grief, not just for him, but for the future I imagined, the kids' names we joked about, the house layout I saved on Pinterest. I let myself mourn all of it without trying to rush through it. Therapy helped. I found a counselor named Dr. Renee Watkins who specializes in relationship trauma and identity rebuilding. She helped me understand that disappearing was not avoidance, it was boundary setting in its most extreme but necessary form. One unexpected thing that came out of this was how my sense of self shifted. I make decisions now without running them through an imaginary filter of how someone else might react. I eat what I want, sleep when I want, plan trips without negotiating. That freedom felt foreign at first and then addictive in the healthiest way. I am not lonely in the way I feared. I am alone in a way that feels spacious. I did hear one final piece of information that cemented everything. Jenna apparently reached out to Aaron again after he told people they were done. She wanted closure. According to Lucas, he ignored her the same way he accused me of hurting him by doing. When I heard that, I felt a strange sense of symmetry. Patterns repeat until someone steps out of them. I stepped out. To answer the question I originally asked, no, I was not missing anything important by leaving the way I did. If anything, I was missing myself by staying. Walking away without a final confrontation gave me clarity instead of chaos. It allowed me to grieve privately and rebuild deliberately. It showed me that I do not need to be present for someone else's reckoning in order to have my own healing. I am not dating. I am not rushing into anything new. I am learning who I am at 27 without anchoring my identity to a relationship that started when I was barely an adult. That feels like work worth doing. Thank you to everyone who told me I was not heartless, dramatic, or wrong. You helped me trust my instincts when everything felt upside down. Stories number 2. My uncle wants to move into my house, and I laughed it off, but now my whole family is acting like I committed a crime. I never thought I would be writing something like this, but here I am, because my phone has been blowing up for days, and I honestly do not know if I am losing my mind or if everyone else is. I am a homeowner in my early 30s, and this matters, because I worked really hard to get here. And the house is not some giant mansion where extra adults can just appear and live comfortably without it changing everything. I bought my house 3 years ago after saving for almost a decade. I skipped vacations. I lived with roommates well into adulthood. I worked overtime and weekends. When I finally closed on the house, I cried in the parking lot of the bank. It is a modest 3-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had something that was truly mine. My Uncle Mark is my mom's older brother. Growing up, he was always around. He was the loud, funny uncle at holidays who told inappropriate jokes and gave us candy before dinner. As a kid, I loved him. As an adult, I started to see him differently. Mark has always been bad with money. He jumps from job to job. He burns bridges. He is charming when he wants something and angry when he does not get it. He has been divorced twice and blames both ex-wives for everything that went wrong in his life. For the last several years, Mark has been living in an apartment owned by a friend of his. From what I understand, it was a handshake deal with cheap rent and no lease. That arrangement recently blew up. According to Mark, the friend is a snake who turned on him. According to everyone else, Mark stopped paying rent on time and treated the place like a storage unit. Either way, he had to move out fast. This is where my house enters the story. Last weekend, my parents hosted a family dinner. My mom, Susan, asked me to come early to help cook. While we were chopping vegetables, she casually mentioned that Mark had been having a rough time. She said it in that careful tone that parents use when they are testing the water before dropping a bomb. At dinner, Mark sat across from me nursing a beer and sighing dramatically. Halfway through the meal, he put his fork down and said he had something to ask me. Everyone at the table went quiet. I honestly thought he was going to ask for help finding an apartment or maybe a short-term loan. Instead, he smiled and said since I have a whole house to myself, maybe I would not mind him moving in for a while until he got back on his feet. I actually laughed. Not a loud, cruel laugh, but a surprised one that came out before I could stop it. I genuinely thought he was joking. The idea was so absurd to me that my brain treated it like a punchline. I said something like, "You are kidding, right?" He was not kidding. The room went silent in that heavy, uncomfortable way. Mark's smile dropped, and he looked offended. My mom shot me a warning look. My dad, Robert, stared at his plate. My cousin Emily looked between us like she was watching a tennis match. Mark said he was serious and that family helps family. He said it would not be a big deal because he would barely be home and he could take the spare room. He said I would not even notice him. That is when I stopped laughing and told him no. I said it calmly. I said I was not comfortable with that and that my house was not set up for another adult to live there long term. Mark's face turned red. He asked me what I meant by not comfortable. He said I had plenty of space and no kids. He said he would help around the house. He said I owed him because he had helped my mom so much over the years. I felt like I was being ambushed. I reminded him that I work from home. I need quiet. I like my routines. I said I did not want a roommate, especially one with an open-ended timeline. I also said I did not like that he was putting me on the spot in front of everyone. That is when things went off the rails. Mark accused me of thinking I was better than him because I owned a house. He said I had become selfish and cold. He said if the roles were reversed, he would help me. I did not believe that, but I did not say it out loud. My mom jumped in and said I could have been nicer about it. She said Mark was vulnerable and I embarrassed him. She said laughing was unnecessary. I told her I laughed because I thought he was joking. She said that did not matter. Dinner ended early. Mark stormed out. I went home feeling like I had just stepped on a landmine without knowing it was there. The next morning, my phone started buzzing. My Aunt Linda texted saying she could not believe I would treat Mark that way. My cousin Jason messaged me saying Mark was devastated and had nowhere to go. My mom called and asked if I would reconsider just for a few months. Here is the thing nobody seems to want to acknowledge. A few months with someone like Mark does not stay a few months. Everyone knows this. He drifts. He gets comfortable. He stops looking, and suddenly it is a year later, and you are the villain for wanting your own house back. I tried explaining this to my mom. I told her I loved Mark, but I did not trust him as a housemate. I told her I was afraid I would never get him out. She said I was assuming the worst. I reminded her of the time he stayed with my grandparents for what was supposed to be a summer and lasted 3 years. She said that was different. Mark himself called me 2 days later. He did not apologize. He said he was hurt that I laughed at him. He said I made him feel small. He said he thought I was someone who valued family. He also mentioned how hard it was for him to find a place with his credit situation, which I did not even know about until then. I told him again that my answer was no. I said I was willing to help him look for apartments. I said I could help him move. I even offered to cover the application fee somewhere. He said that was not the same and accused me of trying to buy my way out of helping. Now my family gatherings are tense. People make comments about how nice it must be to have a house all to myself. Someone joked that I should not worry because I might need help someday. Every time I hear it, my stomach knots. I keep replaying the moment I laughed. I wish I had reacted differently. I wish I had taken a breath and answered calmly from the start. But I also feel like the reaction they want from me is not just an apology for laughing, but a complete surrender of my boundaries. I worked so hard for this house. It is my safe place. The idea of coming home every day, walking on eggshells, worrying about whether my uncle is drunk or angry or refusing to leave, makes me anxious just thinking about it. Part of me feels guilty because he really is struggling. Part of me feels angry because his struggles are not new and they are not random. They are the result of decades of choices that everyone else has been cleaning up after. So here I am being painted as the villain because I laughed and said no. I am being told that I am heartless and selfish. At the same time, nobody else has offered to take him in. Not my mom, not my aunt, not my cousins. Somehow the responsibility landed on me because I have a house and no kids, and therefore, in their eyes, no excuse. I do not think I am wrong for protecting my space. I do think I could have handled the moment better. But I also think it is unfair that my entire character is being judged based on one surprised laugh at a dinner table. I honestly do not know how this will resolve. For now, I am holding my ground and dealing with the cold shoulders. I just needed to get this off my chest because the silence from my side is eating at me and I am starting to question myself in ways I never have before. Update. My uncle wants to move into my house and I laughed it off, but now my whole family is acting like I committed a crime. Things escalated a lot faster than I expected after I posted. I did not send this to anyone in my family, but somehow the tension managed to get worse anyway. A few days after the dinner, my mom asked if she could come over to talk. I agreed because I figured it was better than having everything said through passive-aggressive texts. She came over with that tight smile she uses when she has already decided what the right answer is and just wants me to arrive there on my own. She sat at my kitchen table and immediately started talking about how stressed Mark was and how unstable his situation had become. She said he was sleeping on a friend's couch and that it was humiliating for him. She said she raised me better than to laugh at someone who was struggling. I apologized again for laughing. I told her I genuinely thought he was joking and that I regretted how it came out. I thought that might soften things. It did not. She said the laugh was only part of the problem and that the real issue was me refusing to help in a meaningful way. I told her I had offered help. I listed everything I had already said: helping him search, helping him move, paying application fees, even storing some of his stuff temporarily. She shook her head and said that was surface level help and not what family does when someone is in real trouble. That is when I asked her a question I probably should have asked earlier. I asked why Mark could not stay with her. She went quiet for a second and then said their house was too small and that my dad would not be comfortable with it. I pointed out that their house is bigger than mine and that my dad has a garage and a basement. She said that was different because their marriage needed stability and they could not handle the stress. I remember just staring at her because it felt like she said the quiet part out loud without realizing it. Their comfort mattered. Mine apparently did not. I told her as calmly as I could that my home was also my stability and that I was not willing to sacrifice my mental health to solve a problem that was not created by me. She accused me of being dramatic. She said it was not like Mark was dangerous. She said he was family. I said family should respect boundaries. That set her off. She said boundaries were being overused as an excuse to avoid responsibility. She said when she was my age, she would never have turned her back on her brother. That is when I reminded her of the 3-year summer at my grandparents' house. She snapped that I should not throw old things in her face. I told her it was relevant because it showed a pattern. She said people change. Later that night, Mark texted me a long message. He said my mom told him about our conversation. He said it hurt that I thought so little of him. He said he was not some freeloader and that he would sign something if I wanted. He said he would give me rent once he found work. He said he just needed a chance. I asked him directly how long he expected to stay. He said he did not know and that putting a timeline on it felt cold. That was basically the answer I was afraid of. The next day, my cousin Emily called me. She was the first person who actually sounded conflicted instead of angry. She said the family group chat had been blowing up and that people were taking sides. She told me some of the things being said. Apparently, I am now described as stuck up. Apparently, buying a house went to my head. Apparently, I am selfish because I live alone. I asked her why none of them were offering their couches or spare rooms. She admitted that no one wanted Mark living with them. She said people were afraid it would cause fights or never end. When I pointed out that this was exactly my concern, she went quiet and said she understood, but that I was still the easiest solution. That word stuck with me. Easiest. A couple of days later, something else happened that honestly solidified my decision. Mark showed up at my house unannounced. I was in the middle of a work call and saw him through the window pacing on my porch. I had not told him where I lived beyond a general description, so that alone made me uncomfortable. When I went outside, he said he was in the neighborhood and wanted to talk. He started again about how hard things were and how he felt betrayed. He said he had already told some people he might be moving in with me. I asked why he would do that when I had already said no. He said he thought I would come around once things got real. I told him showing up without asking was not okay. He laughed and said I was being sensitive. That moment hit me harder than anything else. It felt like a preview of exactly what living with him would be like. Boundaries brushed off. Discomfort minimized. My space treated as flexible. I told him again that the answer was no, and that showing up like this made me even more certain. He got angry. He said I was heartless. He said I was letting money and property turn me into someone ugly. He said if I ever needed help, he would remember this. After he left, I sat on my couch, shaking. Not because I felt guilty, but because I felt scared. I realized I had been doubting myself even though every interaction was confirming my original instincts. Since then, I have been firmer. When family members bring it up, I repeat the same line. I am not able to house Mark, but I am willing to help in other ways. Some people have backed off. Some have not. My mom barely talks to me unless it is strained and polite. It hurts. I am not going to pretend it does not. I hate being the bad guy. I hate knowing my uncle is struggling. But I also hate the idea that the price of being considered a good person is giving up my home and my peace indefinitely. I do not know what the long-term impact on my family relationships will be. I do know that every time I imagine Mark living here, my chest tightens and my stomach drops. And every time I imagine standing my ground, I feel steadier, even if it comes with guilt. For now, nothing has changed except the atmosphere. Mark is still couch surfing. My family is still divided. And I am still living alone in the house I worked so hard for, trying to remind myself that protecting my space does not make me a monster, even if some people really want it to. Stories number 3. My family thinks I went too far by not inviting my brother to something important to me. I never thought I would be the kind of person who ends up writing something like this, but I honestly do not know what to do anymore, and it has been eating at me for weeks. I am a 34-year-old guy living in Oregon, and for most of my life I have been very close to my younger brother. His name is Jason, and growing up, it was always the two of us against the world. We shared a room until high school, we played on the same baseball team, and even as adults, we talked on the phone at least once a week. When he married his wife a few years ago, I really tried to be happy for him and supportive, even though I knew from the start that his wife and I were very different people. His wife's name is Melissa, and I want to be very clear that I do not think she is a bad person. She is not cruel or manipulative or anything like that. The problem is that she talks non-stop. I do not mean she's just chatty or enthusiastic. I mean she literally does not stop talking. If there is silence for more than 3 seconds, she fills it. If someone else starts speaking, she interrupts. If you change the subject, she brings it back to something about herself. Family dinners turn into 3-hour monologues about her coworkers, her childhood, her opinions, her stories that somehow never seem to end. I am a pretty quiet person by nature, and after spending time around her, I feel mentally exhausted in a way that is hard to explain. For years, I tolerated it because I love my brother. Holidays, birthdays, random barbecues, I showed up and smiled and nodded, while Melissa talked over everyone, including Jason himself. A few people in the family noticed it, but nobody ever said anything because we did not want to rock the boat. Jason is very defensive of her, and anytime someone lightly jokes about her talking a lot, he shuts it down immediately. Last year, I started planning something that was extremely important to me. I have always loved the outdoors, and after a rough few years personally, I decided I wanted to organize a small weekend backpacking trip with a few close people. No phones, no distractions, just hiking, camping, cooking over a fire, and actually being present. I spent months planning the route, getting permits, testing gear, and training. This trip meant a lot to me, emotionally and mentally, and I knew I needed the right group for it to be a good experience. I invited my best friend Aaron, who I have known since college, my cousin Luke, who is also into hiking, and my sister Emily. I thought long and hard about inviting Jason. I wanted him there, but I also knew that if he came, Melissa would come too. Jason and Melissa do everything together, and he has made it very clear that they are a package deal. The thought of being stuck on a trail for 3 days with non-stop talking honestly made my stomach drop. This trip was supposed to be peaceful. I wanted quiet mornings, long stretches of walking in silence, and calm conversations around the fire. I knew in my gut that Melissa would completely change the entire vibe of the trip. After agonizing over it for days, I made the decision not to invite Jason. I told myself that it was okay to have something just for me and that not every event has to include everyone. I did not announce it or make a big deal about it. I just planned the trip and went. We had an amazing time. It was everything I hoped it would be and more, and for the first time in a long time, I felt relaxed and grounded. The problem started when my sister Emily posted a few photos on social media after we got back. Nothing dramatic, just a picture of us on the trail and one by the campsite. Jason saw it and called me that same night. He asked why he was not invited. I tried to dodge the question at first, but he kept pressing, and eventually I told him the truth. I said I wanted a quiet trip, and that I did not think it would be fair to ask Melissa not to be herself, so I made the choice I did. He completely lost it. He accused me of hating his wife, of excluding him from my life, of being selfish and judgmental. He said if I had a problem with Melissa, I should have talked to him instead of going behind his back. I tried to explain that I was not attacking her as a person and that this was about my own needs for one specific event. He was not hearing any of it. He told our parents, and now my mom says I owe both of them an apology. My dad says he understands where I am coming from, but thinks I handled it poorly. Melissa has not spoken to me directly, but I know she is hurt and embarrassed. Part of me feels awful because I never wanted to hurt anyone. Another part of me is angry that I am expected to sacrifice my own peace to avoid upsetting someone else. I keep going back and forth in my head, wondering if I crossed a line or if this is just one of those situations where no matter what you do, someone is going to be upset. I miss my brother. We have barely spoken since the argument, and that hurts more than I expected. At the same time, I am resentful that he refuses to acknowledge that not everyone experiences his wife the same way. I do not know if I should apologize just to keep the peace or stand my ground and accept the distance. I never thought one weekend trip would turn into this big of a family issue, and now I feel stuck not knowing what the right move is. Update. My family thinks I went too far by not inviting my brother to something important to me. I waited a while before writing this because everything felt raw, and honestly, I did not know if things were going to get better or blow up even more. A lot has happened since my original post, and the situation with my brother and his wife has changed in ways I did not fully expect. A few days after our argument, my mom called me and asked if we could talk calmly. I went over to my parents' house because I figured it was better to do this face to face instead of letting everything spiral through phone calls and group texts. My brother was not there at first, which I later learned was intentional because my mom wanted to hear my side without him jumping in. I explained everything again from the beginning, how much the trip meant to me, how badly I needed something quiet and grounding, and how I genuinely did not know how to include Jason without also including Melissa. I also admitted that I avoided the conversation because I was scared of exactly the reaction I ended up getting. My mom surprised me by saying she understood more than she let on. She said she loves Melissa, but she has noticed how overwhelming she can be and that family gatherings exhaust her too. That was honestly shocking to hear, because my mom has always been the peacekeeper who smooths everything over. My dad nodded along and said he still thought I should have communicated earlier, but he did not think I was cruel or malicious. That conversation alone made me feel less crazy. Later that same evening, Jason showed up. The mood immediately shifted, and I could tell he was still angry. We sat at the kitchen table, and for a while, nobody spoke. Eventually, he said he felt humiliated finding out through social media that I went on a trip with everyone except him. He said it made him feel like I was ashamed of his wife, and by extension, ashamed of him. Hearing it framed that way hit me harder than I expected, and I apologized for how he found out. I told him that part was on me, and that I should have at least given him a heads up. Then, things got tense again, when I tried to explain my feelings about Melissa's non-stop talking. Jason immediately went into defense mode and said that is just who she is and that she should not have to change for anyone. I agreed with that, but said that I also should not have to put myself in situations that leave me mentally drained when there are alternatives. I asked him if he had ever noticed how often Melissa talks over him. He got quiet at that and did not answer right away. A few days after that conversation, Melissa reached out to me directly for the first time. She texted asking if we could talk. I almost said no because I was anxious about it, but I knew avoiding it would only make things worse. We met for coffee, and it was one of the most uncomfortable conversations I have ever had. She started by saying she felt deeply hurt and excluded, and that she had spent days replaying everything in her head, wondering what she did wrong. I was honest, but careful. I told her I do not dislike her, and that I think she is passionate and energetic, but that long periods of constant conversation are hard for me. I said the trip was about quiet and mental health for me, and that I did not think it would be fair to expect her to act differently. To my surprise, she did not explode or get defensive. She got very quiet, and then admitted that multiple people in her life have hinted at this issue before. She said she talks when she is nervous, and that silence makes her uncomfortable. She also admitted she did not realize how intense it could be for quieter people. That conversation did not magically fix everything, but it changed the tone completely. Jason later told me that Melissa cried after our talk, but that it was not out of anger. It was more embarrassment and realization. Since then, she has actually been making a noticeable effort to pause and let other people speak during family dinners. It is not perfect, and I do not expect it to be, but the effort is there. As for Jason and me, we are slowly rebuilding. We are not back to where we were, but we are talking again. He admitted that he reacted so strongly because he felt like he was being forced to choose between me and his wife. I told him that was never my intention, and that I do not expect him to stop being a package deal with her. I just want the freedom to choose what environments I put myself in without being labeled the villain. Where things stand now is this. I apologized for not communicating earlier and for letting him find out the way he did. He apologized for blowing up and involving the entire family without hearing me out. Melissa and I are civil and honestly better than before because at least there is honesty now instead of quiet resentment. I do not regret taking the trip or protecting my peace, but I do regret not trusting the people closest to me with the truth sooner. This whole situation taught me that avoiding hard conversations does not actually prevent pain, it just delays it and often makes it worse. I still believe it is okay to set boundaries even when other people do not like them. I also see now that how you communicate those boundaries matters just as much as the boundary itself. I do not know if our family dynamics will ever be exactly the same, but for the first time since this all started, I feel like we are moving forward instead of just stuck in anger and misunderstanding. Stories number 4. My boyfriend says my cooking proves I'm not a gold digger. I never thought I would be the kind of person to post something like this, but I need outside perspective because my feelings are all over the place and I do not know if I am overreacting or missing something. Important. I am a 29-year-old woman living in the Midwest, and my boyfriend is 35. His name is Daniel, and we have been together a little over a year. We met through mutual friends at a backyard barbecue and hit it off almost immediately. He is charming in a very confident way, works in finance, owns his own house, and makes significantly more money than I do. I work as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized company, and while I am comfortable, I am not anywhere near his income level. From the beginning, there was an unspoken awareness of the financial gap between us. Daniel drives a newer luxury SUV, vacations internationally at least twice a year, and eats out at high-end restaurants without thinking twice about the bill. I grew up in a more modest household, still budget carefully, and learned to cook early because eating out was a treat, not a habit. None of this bothered me at first because Daniel never held it over my head and I never asked him for anything. We usually split things proportionally or he would insist on paying when it was his idea. Things started to feel strange about 3 months ago when Daniel made a comment at a dinner party with his friends. One of his friends, Michael, joked about how younger women only date older successful men for money. Daniel laughed and said something like, "Not all of them. Mine actually cooks, so I know she is not a gold digger." Everyone laughed, including me, because I was caught off guard and did not know what else to do. At the time, I brushed it off as awkward humor, but it stuck with me in a way I could not explain. After that comment, I started noticing a pattern. Every time I cooked a meal for us, Daniel would praise it in a way that felt loaded. He would say things like, "This is how I know you are different," or "This is what real women do," or "My ex never cooked. She just wanted to order takeout on my card." At first, I thought he was just appreciating my effort. Cooking is something I genuinely enjoy, and I often invite him over and make dinner because it feels intimate and grounding. Over time, though, the compliment started to feel less like appreciation and more like validation of some internal test I did not know I was taking. About a month ago, we had dinner with his sister Laura and her husband Ben. Laura asked me how we balance expenses since Daniel makes more money. Before I could answer, Daniel jumped in and said she is low maintenance, she does not care about money, she even cooks all the time. I smiled again because the moment passed quickly, but inside, I felt small and oddly reduced. It was like my value was being measured by how little I cost him and how useful I was domestically. The real issue came up last week. I had a long, stressful day at work, and Daniel suggested I come over. I told him honestly that I was exhausted and did not feel like cooking or doing much of anything. He suggested ordering food. When I arrived, he seemed off. We ordered Thai food and ate on the couch. At some point, he said half-jokingly that it felt weird not having a home-cooked meal from me. I asked him what he meant, and he said it was just something he looked forward to because it showed I cared. I told him I do care, but I am also human and tired sometimes. That is when he said the thing that has been replaying in my head nonstop. He said, when we first started dating, I was worried you might be with me for the wrong reasons. There are a lot of women out there who see what I have and want that lifestyle. But watching you cook for me and not expect fancy things reassured me that you are not a gold digger. I just stared at him. He said it like it was a compliment or a confession meant to bring us closer. I felt my chest tighten and my face get hot. I asked him if he seriously believed my worth as a partner was proven by cooking for him. He backtracked a little and said no, not exactly, but actions matter and effort matters. I told him that effort goes both ways and that cooking is not a moral test. He said I was reading too much into it and that he was just being honest about his fears. He reminded me that he has been burned before by an ex named Vanessa, who apparently drained his finances and left him. I empathized with that, but I told him it is not fair to project that onto me. He apologized for phrasing it badly, but maintained that cooking made him feel secure and appreciated. Since that conversation, I feel different. I still care about him, but now every time I cook, I wonder if I am reinforcing something unhealthy. When I do not cook, I worry he will silently judge me. I hate that something I love now feels transactional. I also feel insulted that he ever thought I might be with him for money when I have never asked for anything extravagant. I have paid for dates, bought him gifts, and supported him emotionally through work stress. I talked to my friend Emily about it, and she was furious on my behalf. She said he sounds misogynistic and controlling in a subtle way. Another friend, Jason, said Daniel might just be emotionally clumsy and trying to express gratitude and reassurance poorly. I am stuck between these perspectives. Daniel has many good qualities. He listens when I talk about my career goals. He encourages me to go back to school if I want. He has never stopped me from seeing friends or criticized my independence. At the same time, I cannot shake the feeling that he sees me through a lens of suspicion and that my behavior is constantly being evaluated against some imaginary gold digger checklist. I worry about the future. What happens if we move in together and I do not want to cook every day? What happens if I lose my job and need help financially? Will that suddenly make me one of those women he fears? I have not brought it up again because I do not know how without sounding accusatory. I am also afraid of what his answer might be. Part of me feels silly for being upset over words when his actions are generally kind. Another part of me feels deeply disrespected and reduced to a stereotype. I want a partner who trusts my intentions without needing proof in the form of domestic labor. So here I am, typing this out, hoping strangers can help me see this more clearly. Am I overthinking a poorly worded compliment, or is this a sign of something bigger that I should not ignore? Update. My boyfriend says my cooking proves I'm not a gold digger. I waited a while before writing this because a lot has happened and I needed time to process it without reacting purely on emotion. After I made my original post, I did not show it to Daniel or mention that I had written anything online. I took a few days to sit with my feelings and read through the responses I got, and I realized one thing very clearly. I could not keep pretending that comment did not change how I felt. A few nights after everything, Daniel invited me over again and asked if I wanted to cook together. That alone made my stomach twist, because even something that innocent now felt loaded. I told him I wanted to talk instead. He could tell I was serious, and we sat at his kitchen table. I told him calmly that what he said about my cooking proving I was not a gold digger really stuck with me, and that it made me feel like I was being judged and tested instead of trusted. At first, he got defensive. He said he already apologized and did not understand why I was still upset. I told him an apology does not erase the underlying belief. I asked him directly if he would still feel the same way about me if I never cooked again or if I needed financial help one day. He hesitated. That hesitation said more than anything else could have. He eventually said he would not leave me over something like that, but admitted that financial imbalance makes him anxious. He said he worked hard for what he has and has seen friends get taken advantage of. I told him I understand fear, but fear does not justify reducing your partner to a stereotype. I explained how exhausting it feels to know my worth in his eyes is tied to how little I ask for and how much I give. I told him I want to be wanted for who I am, not for how convenient I am. That is when things shifted. He went quiet in a way I had not seen before. He admitted that he does keep score in his head, even if he does not mean to. He said cooking felt like proof of effort because acts of service are important to him. I told him that acts of service are meaningful when they are freely given, not when they are expected or used as reassurance against suspicion. I also brought up the comments he made in front of other people. He looked genuinely embarrassed about that. He said he did not realize how it sounded and thought he was complimenting me. I told him intent does not erase impact. He apologized again, and this time it felt more sincere. He said he never wanted me to feel like I was auditioning for a role in his life. After that conversation, I thought things might improve, but over the next 2 weeks, I noticed how deep this issue actually ran. Little comments would slip out. He would praise me for being low maintenance. He would joke about how easy I am compared to other women he dated. Every time he said something like that, it felt like another reminder that his past baggage was still sitting between us. The turning point came when I had an unexpected car repair that cost more than I could comfortably cover that month. I did not even ask him for help. I mentioned it in passing, and he immediately offered to pay. I hesitated, but eventually accepted a partial loan that I fully intended to pay back. His mood changed after that. He was not mean, but he became quieter and more distant. A few days later, he asked me how I planned to repay him. That question hurt more than I expected. I realized then that no matter what I did, there would always be a part of him watching for signs that I might become the thing he fears. I sat with that realization for a full day and felt a deep sadness. I care about him, but I do not want to live my life constantly proving my intentions. Love should feel safe, not conditional. I asked to meet and told him I needed space. He was shocked and asked if this was really about the cooking comment. I told him it was about trust and respect and the fact that I do not feel fully seen as an equal partner. He said he would work on it and even suggested couples counseling. That meant something to me, but it also felt like too much damage had already been done. After a lot of tears and a very long conversation, I ended the relationship. It was not explosive or dramatic. It was quiet and heavy. He said he loved me, and I believe he does in his own way. I told him I love him too, but love is not enough when I feel like I am on trial. We hugged, and I left. It has been a few weeks now. I miss him sometimes, especially the good moments. I also feel lighter. I cook because I want to again, not because it proves anything. I learned that subtle things matter and that discomfort is worth listening to even when everything looks fine on the surface. I do not think Daniel is a villain. I think he is a man who has not unpacked his fears and projected them onto someone who did not deserve it. I hope he grows from this. As for me, I am taking this as a lesson to never minimize myself to make someone else feel secure. Stories number 5. My sister expects me to pick up my niece at 3 a.m. with no questions asked, and now my whole family says I'm heartless. I'm still trying to figure out if I'm losing my mind here or if my family has just decided I'm the villain of the year. This blew up so fast that I barely had time to process it before everyone had an opinion about my character. I'm a 32-year-old guy living in Ohio. I work a pretty demanding job in logistics, and my schedule is brutal. Early mornings, late nights, and a lot of responsibility. I live alone, no kids, no partner, and I value my sleep because without it, I'm useless at work. My sister Emily is 35 and has a daughter, Lily, who is 12. Emily has always had a bit of a chaotic life. Different jobs, different relationships, a lot of last-minute plans. I've helped her plenty over the years. I've babysat, lent money, fixed her car, and been the backup plan more times than I can count. A few nights ago, I had gone to bed around 11 because I had to be up at 5 for work. At exactly 3:07 a.m., my phone starts blowing up. I wake up to missed calls and text from Emily. The last text just says, "Call me now. Emergency." So, I call her back, half asleep and already anxious. She's clearly stressed and talking fast. She tells me she needs me to pick up Lily right now. I ask where Lily is. Emily says she's at a friend's house about 45 minutes away. I ask why she needs to be picked up at 3 a.m. Emily says she can't explain and that I just need to trust her and go get her daughter. No questions asked. That's where I paused. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I just wanted to know what was going on. I asked if Lily was safe. Emily said yes. I asked if the parents of the friend knew Lily would be leaving at 3 a.m. Emily snapped and said none of that mattered and that I was wasting time. I told her I wasn't comfortable driving almost an hour in the middle of the night without understanding why, especially when I had work in 2 hours. I said if Lily was in danger, I would go immediately, but I needed to know what kind of situation this was. Emily started crying and yelling, saying I always judge her and that family doesn't ask questions in emergencies. I suggested she go get Lily herself or call our parents who live closer to that area. Emily said she couldn't because she'd been drinking and didn't want to involve mom and dad because they would freak out. That's when alarm bells really went off for me. She admitted she'd been drinking, but still expected me to jump out of bed and fix it. I told her I wasn't saying no forever, but I needed clarity. She hung up on me. 10 minutes later, my phone starts lighting up again, this time with texts from my mom, Karen. She asks why I'm refusing to help my sister in an emergency. I try to explain calmly that I didn't refuse, I just asked questions. My dad, Robert, texts me saying I need to step up and stop being selfish. Emily then sends me a long message saying I've traumatized Lily by abandoning her and that she'll never forget this. I didn't end up going. Emily eventually called one of her friends to pick Lily up. Apparently Lily was fine, just tired and confused. I found out later through my cousin that Emily had gotten into a fight with her boyfriend Jason, and he kicked her out of his place. Lily had been sleeping over at a friend's house nearby, and Emily wanted Lily out of there immediately so she could take her to another friend's apartment. That was the big emergency. The next day, I went to work exhausted anyway because I barely slept after all that. When I got off, I had voicemails from my parents telling me they were disappointed in me. My mom said she raised me better than to abandon family in a crisis. My dad said one day I'll need help and no one will be there for me. Emily sent me another message saying I broke her trust and that Lily now knows she can't rely on her uncle. That one really hurt because I love that kid. I've been to her school events. I've helped with homework. I've been there when Emily wasn't. What's bothering me the most is that no one seems to care about my boundaries or the fact that Emily created this situation herself. She chose to drink. She chose to have Lily sleeping far away. She chose not to plan for a backup. Somehow I'm the bad guy because I didn't blindly obey a demand at 3 a.m. I keep replaying the call in my head, wondering if I should have just gone and dealt with the consequences later. Maybe I should have picked Lily up and then had a talk with Emily the next day. But another part of me feels like if I had done that, it would just reinforce the idea that I'm on call 24/7 no matter what. Now family group chats are awkward. My parents are cold. Emily won't talk to me. I'm being treated like I committed some unforgivable sin, all because I asked a question before agreeing to a middle-of-the-night rescue mission. I honestly don't know if I crossed a line or if I'm just the easiest person for everyone to blame. I didn't think asking why was unreasonable. I didn't think it was wrong to say I wasn't comfortable jumping into a vague situation with zero information. But the way everyone reacted makes me feel like I failed some invisible test of loyalty. So here I am, wondering if I really am the asshole for not agreeing to pick up my niece at 3 a.m. with no questions asked. Update: my sister expects me to pick up my niece at 3 a.m. with no questions asked, and now my whole family says I'm heartless. A few days have passed and things have gotten messier than I expected. I didn't plan to post an update this soon, but a lot happened and I'm still trying to process it. After everything blew up, I decided to give my parents some space for a day. That didn't last long. My mom called me the following evening and asked if we could talk in person. I went over to their house, thinking this might finally be a calm conversation. I was wrong. Both my parents were already on edge when I arrived. My mom started by saying she was disappointed and hurt. My dad backed her up and said Emily had been crying nonstop and that Lily felt unwanted. I asked how Lily even knew about the argument since none of this should have been put on her. That question didn't go over well. My mom said I was deflecting instead of taking responsibility. I explained again what actually happened that night. I told them I didn't refuse to help. I told them Emily admitted she'd been drinking and wouldn't tell me why Lily needed to be picked up in the middle of the night. I said I wasn't comfortable driving nearly an hour half asleep without knowing what kind of situation I was walking into. I also said it wasn't fair to expect me to clean up a mess that came from bad decisions. My dad said family doesn't keep score like that. I said I wasn't keeping score, I was setting boundaries. That word seemed to trigger something because my mom immediately said boundaries are just excuses people use when they don't want to help. That's when I finally snapped a bit. I told them about all the times I've helped Emily without complaint. The money I loaned her that never came back, the weekends I gave up, the times I left work early to deal with her emergencies. I asked them why this one moment erased all of that. There was a long silence. Then my mom admitted Emily hadn't told them the full story at first. She had made it sound like Lily was in danger, and I just refused out of laziness. When my mom pressed for details later, Emily admitted it was about a fight with Jason and that she just didn't want to deal with our parents' reaction. That changed the tone slightly, but not as much as I hoped. My dad said even if Emily handled it badly, Lily still needed support. I said Lily always has my support, but that doesn't mean I agree to anything at any time without question. The real turning point came the next day when Emily finally agreed to talk to me directly. We met at a coffee shop. She looked exhausted and defensive. Before I could even speak, she accused me of making her look like a bad mother in front of our parents. I told her I didn't say anything that wasn't true. She admitted she was drunk that night and panicking. She said she felt trapped and lashed out at me because I was the safest person to dump it on. That hurt to hear, even though it was honest. I told her Lily should never be used as leverage to guilt me. Emily got quiet and then started crying again. She said Lily asked the next morning why her uncle didn't want to pick her up. That made my stomach drop. I asked Emily exactly what she told her. She said she told Lily I was busy and didn't think it was important. I told her that was unfair and damaging. Emily tried to brush it off, but I didn't let it go. I told her I love Lily and I would always help when it's truly needed, but I won't be treated like an on-call emergency service anymore. I said if she ever calls me in the middle of the night again, I need honesty or I'm not going. Emily didn't like that. She said I was being controlling. I said no, I'm being clear. Since then, things have been tense, but quieter. My parents have stopped blowing up my phone. My mom sent a short text saying she understands my side more now, though she still wishes I'd handled it differently. Emily hasn't apologized, but she hasn't accused me of traumatizing Lily again either. The hardest part is Lily. I haven't seen her yet, and I hate the idea that she might think I don't care about her. I sent her a birthday card early with a handwritten note telling her I love her, and I'm always here for her. I don't know what Emily will let her see or hear. I still feel conflicted. Part of me wishes I had just gotten in the car that night to avoid all this fallout. Another part of me knows that if I had, nothing would change, and the next 3am call would come even easier. I'm standing by my decision, even though it cost me some peace with my family. I just hope in the long run, they understand that saying no to blind demands doesn't mean saying no to love or responsibility. Stories number 6. My fiance is demanding I stop making home-cooked meals for a friend. I am a 31-year-old man living in Illinois, and I am engaged to my fiancée Lauren, who is 29. We have been together for 4 years and engaged for almost 1. We live together in a townhouse we bought last year, and for the most part, our life is stable and predictable in a good way. We both work full-time, split bills evenly, and have talked seriously about marriage, kids, and where we want to settle long-term. This situation has blindsided me because it is the first time I have seriously questioned whether our values actually line up. I grew up in a family where food was how we showed care. My mom, Patricia, cooked every night even when she worked double shifts, and my dad, Thomas, would pack leftovers for neighbors or coworkers who were struggling. I picked that up without really thinking about it. Cooking relaxes me, and it makes me feel useful. I meal prep on Sundays and usually make enough food to last most of the week. About 8 months ago, a close friend of mine named Kevin went through a really rough divorce. Kevin is 33, and I have known him since college. We were roommates for 2 years and stayed close after graduation, even when life got busy. His wife left suddenly, and it turned into a messy legal situation that drained him emotionally and financially. He moved into a small apartment nearby, and between legal fees and depression, he stopped taking care of himself. He lost weight, stopped cooking, and mostly lived off fast food and protein bars. I started bringing him food without making a big deal out of it. The first time I just had extra chili and dropped it off. He looked genuinely relieved and almost embarrassed. After that, I started making an extra portion whenever I cooked and would bring it by once or twice a week. Nothing fancy. Stuff like baked chicken, rice, vegetables, soup, pasta. Kevin never asked for it and always offered to pay me back, which I refused. For me, it was just what you do when someone you care about is struggling. Lauren knew about this from the beginning. At first, she thought it was nice. She even helped me pack food a couple of times. Kevin has met her many times, and their relationship has always been friendly, but not close. There has never been anything romantic or inappropriate between Kevin and me, and I hate that I even feel the need to clarify that. I am straight, engaged, and not confused about my relationship or my boundaries. Things changed about 2 months ago. Lauren started making comments about how often I went over to Kevin's place. I usually stayed maybe 15 minutes to drop food and talk. She asked why he could not cook for himself. I explained again that he was dealing with depression and long work hours. She said everyone has problems and that I was enabling him. That stung, but I brushed it off as stress. Then last week, it escalated. I was packing up some containers of food, and Lauren asked where I was going. I said I was taking dinner to Kevin because he had a court hearing that day. She sighed loudly and said this had gone on long enough. I asked what she meant, and she said it was weird that I was playing house for another adult and that it made her uncomfortable. I laughed at first because I genuinely thought she was joking. She was not. Lauren told me she wanted me to stop cooking for Kevin entirely. Not cut back, not set a timeline. Stop. She said once we are married, my priority should be our household and not feeding other people. She said it felt like emotional labor that should be reserved for a partner. I told her I did not agree and that cooking an extra portion of food did not take anything away from us. She said it did because it took my time and energy. The argument got heated in a way that shocked me. She accused me of caring more about Kevin than her, which is not true. She said it looked bad and that if the roles were reversed, people would question it. She asked how it would look if she was cooking weekly meals for a male friend. I told her honestly that if the context was the same, I would not have an issue with it. She said that was easy for me to say, but not realistic. What hurt the most was when she said that once we are married, she expects me to run decisions like this by her first. I told her I was not asking permission to be kind. She said marriage is about unity and that I was acting like a single man. That sentence has been echoing in my head ever since. I did take the food to Kevin that night. I will be honest. Part of me did it because I did not want to set the precedent that Lauren gets to dictate my friendships. When I got back, Lauren barely spoke to me. The next day, she doubled down and said she needed me to choose what kind of life partner I wanted to be. She said she did not sign up to share emotional space with my friends. Now I am stuck questioning everything. This is not about Kevin specifically. This is about whether kindness outside our relationship is seen as a threat. It worries me that something so small has turned into a power struggle. I keep thinking about future scenarios. If a neighbor needs help, if a family member falls on hard times, if one of us gets sick and needs support from others, are those things going to be seen as competition? I have tried to compromise. I suggested setting a clear endpoint where I taper off as Kevin gets back on his feet. Lauren said no, because that still centers him. I suggested she come with me sometimes, so it feels less secretive, even though it never was. She said she does not want to be involved. She just wants it to stop. Kevin does not even know this is an issue. I have not told him because I do not want him to feel like a burden or the cause of conflict. He has actually been doing better lately. He started therapy and got a more stable schedule at work. I probably would have naturally slowed down the meals in another month or two. Now it feels different because it is being demanded instead of happening organically. I love Lauren. I really do. But this has cracked something open that I cannot unsee. I am wondering if I am missing something from her perspective, or if this is the start of a larger control issue. I do not want to enter a marriage where generosity is treated like betrayal. At the same time, I do not want to dismiss my future wife's feelings if I am somehow crossing a line I genuinely do not see. I have not stopped cooking for Kevin yet. I also have not told Lauren I will refuse outright. We are in this tense, quiet standoff that feels awful. I am asking for outside perspective because I feel too close to this to be objective. Am I being stubborn, or is this a reasonable boundary to hold? I need to know before I make a decision that affects not just this friendship, but my entire future. Stories number 7. My weight loss in my 60s has created a rift with my daughters and granddaughter, and I do not know how to fix it. I am a 62-year-old woman, and this is not something I ever thought would become a family problem, but here we are. I want to be clear from the start that this is not a humble brag, and it is not me fishing for compliments. I am genuinely confused and hurt, and I feel like I am walking on eggshells around the people I love most. For most of my adult life, I was overweight. Not just a little, but enough that it affected my health and my confidence. I raised 2 daughters while working full-time, and like many women, I put myself last. I cooked for everyone else. I grabbed fast food between errands. I was always tired and always told myself I would take care of my body later. Later turned into decades. In my late 50s, my doctor started getting very serious with me. My blood pressure was high. My cholesterol was climbing. My knees hurt all the time. I was out of breath going upstairs. During one appointment, he looked at me and said that if I did not make changes, I was going to spend my retirement managing preventable problems. Something about that finally clicked. I did not do anything extreme. No surgery. No crash dieting. I started walking every day. I learned how to cook differently. I tracked what I ate. I stopped using food as comfort the way I always had. It took time, years actually, but slowly the weight came off. I lost about 70 pounds in total. Physically, I feel better than I have in decades. I can move without pain. I sleep better. My lab results improved. I feel proud of myself in a quiet way that I never used to. What I did not expect was the reaction from my family. My older daughter Karen is 44. My younger daughter Melissa is 38. My granddaughter Ava is 22 and is Karen's daughter. All three of them have struggled with body image in different ways over the years. Karen has been vocal about rejecting diet culture and embracing body positivity. Melissa has gone through cycles of dieting and then feeling like a failure when it did not stick. Ava is very active on social media and talks openly about self-love and rejecting beauty standards. When I first started losing weight, everyone was supportive. They told me they were proud of me for focusing on my health. They asked about my walks and my recipes. It felt nice to finally be encouraged. Then something shifted. Comments started creeping in. Karen would say things like, "I hope you are not starving yourself." Melissa would joke about how she could never be that disciplined. Ava would say things like, "You know you were beautiful before to right." I always agreed with that. I never once said I was ugly before or that anyone else needed to change. I was doing this for me and my health. I tried to make that clear. As I lost more weight, the tone changed further. Karen started making comments about how society treats thin women better and how unfair it is. Melissa would roll her eyes if I mentioned going for a walk. Ava stopped liking my photos when I posted about milestones like finishing a charity walk. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Then, it became impossible to ignore. At a family dinner last year, Karen snapped at me when I declined dessert. She said it must be nice to have so much control and that some of us do not have that luxury. The room went quiet. I felt embarrassed and confused. I told her she could enjoy dessert and that my choices were about my own body. She said it still made people feel judged. Melissa later pulled me aside and asked me not to talk about weight loss around Karen anymore because it triggered her. I agreed. I stopped mentioning it entirely. I stopped sharing updates. I stopped talking about my routines. That did not help. Now the tension feels constant. Ava barely talks to me when I visit. Karen is distant and clipped. Melissa oscillates between supportive and uncomfortable depending on the day. A few months ago, Karen finally said what I think had been building for a long time. She told me that my weight loss made her feel like I was rejecting the body I had when I raised her. She said it made her feel like I was saying that version of me was not good enough. She said it also made her feel like she was failing at loving herself because her own mother chose to change. That broke my heart. I told her that the body I had when I raised her carried me through hard years. It gave birth to her. It worked and cooked and cared. I told her I did not hate that body. I just wanted to feel better now. I told her loving myself also meant taking care of my health. She said she understood logically, but emotionally it still hurt. Ava later told me that seeing me praised by extended family for losing weight made her angry because she feels like women are only celebrated when they get smaller. She said it felt like a betrayal of everything she believes in. She said it made her question whether I secretly judge her. I do not. I have never judged her body or anyone else's. Now, family gatherings feel strained. I feel like I have to make myself smaller in every sense, not physically but emotionally. I avoid certain clothes. I avoid certain topics. I downplay my happiness. I feel like I am being punished for taking care of myself. At the same time, I do not want to damage my relationships. I love my daughters. I adore my granddaughter. I want them to feel safe and loved around me. I also refuse to believe that the only way to fix this is to gain the weight back. I have tried reassurance. I have tried listening. I have apologized for hurting feelings even though I never intended to. I have asked what they need from me, and the answers are vague. Just be mindful. Just do not talk about it. Just understand how hard it is. I am understanding. I am also human. I feel caught between generations and belief systems. I grew up being told my worth was tied to my size. I spent years undoing that damage. Now I feel like I am being told that choosing health is itself a moral failing because of how society reacts to it. I do not want to choose between my body and my family. I am looking for a way to repair these relationships without erasing myself. I want to know how to communicate that my choices are not commentary on theirs. I want to support their body acceptance without being asked to reject my own journey. I am tired of feeling like I did something wrong by finally taking care of myself. Update. My weight loss in my 60s has created a rift with my daughters and granddaughter, and I do not know how to fix it. A lot has happened since I last wrote, and I feel emotionally wrung out, but also clearer than I have in a long time. After sitting with everything and replaying conversations in my head, I realized that tiptoeing around the issue was not helping anyone, including me. So I decided to have honest one-on-one conversations instead of letting resentment grow in silence. I started with Melissa because she tends to be the most open when she is not caught between sides. I invited her over for coffee and told her up front that I was not trying to argue or defend myself, but that I needed to understand what was really going on. I told her I felt like I was losing my family and did not know how to stop it. She surprised me by crying almost immediately. She said she felt torn because she was genuinely proud of me, but also deeply uncomfortable with her own relationship to food and her body. She said seeing me succeed where she felt stuck made her feel like a failure, even though she knew that was not fair. She admitted that sometimes it was easier to be distant than to sit with those feelings. That conversation helped more than I expected because it finally felt honest. I told her that I never expected my journey to be inspiring or triggering, and that I was sorry she was hurting. I also told her gently that I could not be responsible for managing everyone else's internal battles by shrinking myself emotionally. She nodded and said she understood, even if it would take time. Karen was harder. When I asked her to talk, she was defensive from the start. She said she already knew what I was going to say, and that she did not want a lecture about health. I told her this was not about convincing her of anything. I told her it was about our relationship. I told her something I had not said before. I told her that when she frames my weight loss as a rejection of my past self, it makes me feel like my current self is not allowed to exist. I told her that I can honor the body that carried me through motherhood and still choose to care for the body I have now. I told her those two things are not opposites. She pushed back and said that growing up with a mother who struggled with weight shaped how she saw herself, and that watching me change now felt like rewriting history. She said it made her question whether the comfort food and habits we shared were actually harmful, and that scared her. That was a turning point for me. I realized that for her, this was not really about me at all. It was about memory and meaning and fear. I told her that our memories are not invalidated by my current choices. I told her that love and comfort were real, even if our understanding of nutrition has evolved. I told her I am still the same mother who showed up to school events and stayed up late talking and hugged her when she cried. She did not fully soften, but she did quiet down. She said she needed time. I told her I could respect that, but that I would no longer accept comments that painted me as shallow or disloyal for taking care of myself. I said that boundary out loud for the first time, and my hands were shaking, but I meant it. The most surprising conversation was with Ava. She had been the coldest toward me, and I assumed she saw me as some symbol of everything she resented. I asked if she would go for a walk with me, and she hesitated, but agreed. About halfway through, she admitted that seeing older relatives praise me had made her feel invisible. She said she feels constant pressure as a young woman to look a certain way, and that my weight loss felt like confirmation that thinner is always better, no matter how much people talk about acceptance. I told her something I wish someone had told me at her age. I told her that people will always project their values onto women's bodies and that it is exhausting and unfair. I told her that my joy in feeling healthier does not mean I believe anyone else needs to change. I told her I am proud of her for questioning harmful standards even when it is uncomfortable. She asked me directly if I ever judged her. I looked her in the eye and said no. I told her I worry about her stress and happiness, not her size. She cried and hugged me and said she had built a version of me in her head that was easier to be angry at than the real one. After those conversations, things are not magically fixed, but they are different. Karen still keeps some distance, but she has stopped making pointed comments. Melissa has started texting me again about everyday things. Ava sent me a picture last week and said she thought of me when she saw something funny. Those small moments feel huge. I have also made a few changes myself. Not to my body, but to my behavior. I no longer hide my habits, but I also do not center conversations around them. I talk about how I feel instead of what I weigh. I redirect praise when people comment on my appearance and say I am just glad to feel well. Not because I am ashamed, but because I do not want to feed a narrative that hurts people I love. At the same time, I have stopped apologizing for existing in the body I have now. That was the hardest lesson. I can be compassionate without self-erasure. I can listen without accepting blame that is not mine. I can love my family without undoing years of work I did for my health. I do not know if this will ever fully resolve. Beliefs about bodies run deep, especially between generations. But I no longer feel like I am standing alone in a storm, wondering what I did wrong. I did not lose weight to be celebrated or to make a statement. I did it to live more comfortably in my later years. I am allowed to want that. And I am allowed to want my family with me while I do. Stories number 8. My wife says I humiliated her by making her sit in the back seat during a long drive. I never imagined something so small could turn into such a big problem between my wife and me, but here we are, barely speaking over what should have been a normal road trip. I am 38 years old, and I live in Illinois with my wife, who is 35. We have been married for 7 years, and overall, I would say our relationship is solid. We argue like any other couple, but nothing that ever felt like it threatened the foundation of our marriage until now. For some context, I take driving very seriously. I am not one of those people who is afraid of driving, but I am very focused when I am behind the wheel. I grew up with a dad who drilled it into my head that driving is a responsibility and not something to be casual about. I do not text while driving. I do not eat messy food, and I get anxious when there are too many distractions. My wife knows this about me. We have talked about it before, and she has teased me about being uptight, but she also usually respects it. My wife's name is Lauren, and she is the complete opposite of me in a lot of ways. She is energetic, expressive, and always multitasking. She talks with her hands. She changes songs every 30 seconds, and she likes to point out things she sees on the road, even when I am trying to merge or navigate traffic. Most of the time I brush it off because I love her, and I know she is not trying to be annoying. This time, though, it felt different because of the circumstances. We were driving to visit her family in Missouri, which is about a 6-hour drive from where we live. We decided to take my car because it is newer and more comfortable for long trips. Everything was fine for the first hour or so. Then, Lauren started doing this thing she does, where she constantly leans over to show me something on her phone. She was scrolling through social media, showing me videos, reading comments out loud, and asking me questions that required more than a yes or no answer. I reminded her gently that I needed to focus on the road. She apologized, but within minutes, she was doing it again. As traffic got heavier, I started feeling overwhelmed. She was adjusting the air vents, changing the music, pointing out license plates, and touching my arm while talking. At one point, she grabbed my phone from the cup holder to check a notification, and that was where I snapped a little. I told her firmly to please stop because she was distracting me and it was making me nervous. She rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic. About another 30 minutes passed and it just kept happening. I missed an exit because she was talking loudly and waving her phone in front of me to show me a picture. I had to make a sudden lane change to correct it, and a car honked at us. My heart was racing and my hands were shaking. I pulled into a gas station to calm down. Lauren laughed and said I needed to relax. That honestly made me feel worse because I felt like she was not taking me seriously at all. Here is where things went sideways. I told her that if she could not stop distracting me, she needed to sit in the back seat for the rest of the drive. I said it calmly but firmly. She stared at me like I had just insulted her on a personal level. She asked if I was serious, and I said yes because I did not feel safe driving like that. She got extremely quiet and without another word got out of the car and moved her bag to the back seat. The rest of the drive was painfully silent. I could feel how angry she was even without looking at her. When we arrived at her parents' house, she barely spoke to me. Later that night, she completely unloaded on me in the guest room. She said I embarrassed her, treated her like a child, and humiliated her by making her ride in the back seat like she was being punished. She said if I really loved her, I would not have done that, and that I should have just dealt with it instead of making a scene. I tried to explain that it was not about control or disrespect, but about safety and my mental state while driving. I told her I was genuinely scared something bad could happen if I stayed that distracted. She said I was exaggerating and accused me of valuing my comfort over her dignity. That hurt because I do value her and I never wanted to make her feel small. Since then, the tension has not gone away. Her parents noticed something was off and she told her sister about it, who later pulled me aside and said I should apologize because what I did was extreme. On the other hand, when I told my coworker Mark about it, he said he probably would have done the same thing if he felt unsafe. Now I am stuck wondering if I crossed a line. I understand why she felt embarrassed, but I also feel like my concerns were ignored until I did something drastic. I do not want this to turn into a bigger issue about respect and power in our marriage, but I also do not want to pretend I was wrong for wanting to feel safe while driving. I keep replaying the moment in my head and wondering if there was another way to handle it that would not have led us here. I love my wife, and I hate that such a stupid situation has put this much strain between us, but I also do not know how to move forward without feeling like I am the only one expected to compromise. Update: my wife says I humiliated her by making her sit in the back seat during a long drive. A lot has happened since I wrote the original post, and I took some time before writing this because I wanted things to cool down, and I also wanted to understand my own feelings better instead of reacting defensively. The drive back home ended up being just as tense as the trip there, but for different reasons. Lauren refused to ride in my car at all on the way back and insisted her dad drive us halfway before we switched. That alone should tell you how deeply this affected her. Once we were back home, the silence stretched on for days. We were polite but distant, and it felt like we were roommates avoiding a fight instead of a married couple. Eventually, I told her we needed to talk because letting resentment build was not healthy. We sat at the kitchen table, and this time, I listened more than I talked. She told me that what hurt her the most was not the backseat itself, but the feeling that I chose to publicly assert authority over her instead of working with her. She said sitting in the back seat made her feel small and embarrassed, and that she kept replaying it in her head, wondering if people at the gas station thought she had done something wrong. Hearing that made something click for me. In my head, I was solving a safety problem, but in her head, I was sending a message about power and control, even if that was never my intention. I apologized sincerely for the way I handled it and for not pulling over and having a calmer conversation instead of giving her an ultimatum. That apology mattered more to her than I realized, because she immediately softened and admitted she had not been fair to me either. She acknowledged that she ignored multiple requests for her to stop distracting me, and that grabbing my phone crossed a line. She admitted she tends to minimize things that do not bother her personally, and that she laughed it off instead of taking me seriously. That was hard for her to say, and I could tell she meant it. We both ended up apologizing for different parts of the same moment, and that helped more than assigning blame ever could. We also talked very honestly about boundaries going forward. I told her that when I am driving, I need her to trust that I am not being dramatic when I say I am overwhelmed. She agreed and suggested a rule where whoever is driving gets full control of music and phone access unless they ask otherwise. She also said if she feels restless or bored, she can put headphones in or sit quietly instead of engaging me. On my side, I agreed that if I feel myself getting close to snapping, I will pull over and communicate instead of reacting in a way that could feel humiliating to her. One thing that surprised me was that she asked if this was about more than just the drive. I admitted that I sometimes feel like my need for calm and focus gets brushed aside because I am the quieter one in the relationship. She admitted she had never thought about it that way and said she does not want to be someone who steamrolls the person she loves just because she is louder. That conversation went deeper than the car incident ever did, and in a strange way, I think it brought us closer. We have driven together since then, and it has honestly been better. She makes a visible effort to give me space when I am driving, and I make a visible effort to check in instead of bottling things up. The incident still comes up occasionally, and she is still sensitive about it, but the anger is gone. What is left is more understanding than we had before. Looking back, I still believe my concern for safety was valid, but I can now admit that the way I handled it mattered just as much as why I did it. I do not think I am a villain, and I do not think she is either. I think we were two people talking past each other until things escalated. This experience reminded me that being right does not always mean being kind, and that even practical decisions can carry emotional weight I did not consider in the moment. We are doing better now, and I am hopeful that this ends up being one of those moments we look back on as uncomfortable but necessary for growth rather than something that quietly damaged our marriage. Stories number 9. My job fired me over an eating disorder I do not have. I never imagined I would be writing something like this, but I am honestly at a loss and feel embarrassed, angry, and confused all at the same time. I am a 31-year-old woman living in the US, and until recently, I worked at a mid-sized tech support company. I had been there for almost 4 years and had consistently good performance reviews. My job was not glamorous, but it paid my bills, gave me health insurance, and I was proud of the work I did. I never had any disciplinary issues, never wrote anyone up, never got written up myself, and I genuinely thought I was a solid employee. About 6 months ago, I decided to make some lifestyle changes. I had been feeling tired all the time, and my doctor suggested adjusting my diet and being more intentional about meals. I did not go on any extreme plan. I just started bringing lunches from home instead of ordering fast food and stopped snacking constantly at my desk. I also lost some weight, not a dramatic amount, but enough that people noticed. I did not talk about it much because I do not like my body being a topic of conversation at work. That is when the comments started. At first they were framed as concern. A coworker named Megan asked me if I was eating enough. Another coworker, Brian, joked that I was surviving on air and coffee. I laughed it off and said I was fine. I assumed people would move on. They did not. The comments became more frequent and more invasive. People would watch what I ate. If I skipped a team lunch because I already brought food, someone would comment on it. If I did not finish everything on my plate, someone would raise an eyebrow. I want to be very clear. I do not have an eating disorder. I have never been diagnosed with one. I eat regular meals. I snack. I enjoy food. I just stopped eating junk constantly at work. That is it. But for some reason, that became a story people told themselves about me. Things escalated when my manager, Kevin, asked to speak with me privately. He told me HR had received concerns about my health and well-being. I asked what that meant, and he said some coworkers were worried I might be struggling with disordered eating. I was stunned. I told him that was not true and that my doctor was happy with my health. He said they just wanted to make sure I was okay and encouraged me to talk to HR. When I met with HR, the representative, Lisa, spoke to me in the slow, careful tone people use when they think you are fragile. She asked me about my eating habits, my stress levels, and my body image. I felt humiliated. I told her repeatedly that I did not have an eating disorder and that these questions felt inappropriate. She said they had a responsibility to ensure employees were not a danger to themselves. After that meeting, I started feeling watched. People whispered. Someone left a protein bar on my desk with a sticky note that said, "Please eat." I wanted to disappear. I went back to HR and asked them to make the comments stop. Instead, they suggested I take advantage of the Employee Assistance Program and speak to a counselor. I told them again I did not have a problem to treat. 2 weeks later, I was called into another meeting. This time, Kevin and Lisa were both there. They told me they were concerned that I was refusing help and that my behavior was creating a stressful environment for my coworkers. I asked what behavior they were talking about. They said my eating habits and visible weight loss were triggering to others and distracting. I could not believe what I was hearing. Then Lisa said something that still echoes in my head. She said until I could acknowledge the issue and show willingness to address it, they could not keep me employed. I told them I could get a note from my doctor. She said it would not be enough because this was about workplace impact, not medical clearance. 10 minutes later, they handed me termination paperwork. I walked out in shock. I cried in my car for an hour. I felt like I had been punished for my body changing and for refusing to accept a diagnosis that was never mine. I told my parents, Linda and Robert, and they were furious. My sister Hannah told me this sounded illegal. Friends were split between being outraged and being confused about how this could even happen. Since then, I have replayed every interaction in my head. I keep wondering if I should have eaten the office donuts just to avoid attention. I feel violated that my body and food choices became company business. I am angry that concern turned into control. I am scared because I lost my income over something I did not do. I have started speaking with an employment lawyer named Thomas. He told me that firing someone based on perceived medical conditions can cross serious legal lines. He said what they did sounds like discrimination and possibly harassment. Hearing that helped, but I am still exhausted. I am job hunting now and trying to rebuild my confidence. I find myself anxious about eating in public again, which is deeply ironic given what they accused me of. I do not know how this became my reality. I went to work, did my job, ate my lunch, and somehow ended up unemployed because people decided they knew my health better than I did. I feel like my autonomy was stripped away under the guise of concern. I am sharing this because I feel alone and because I still cannot believe this happened to me. Update: my job fired me over an eating disorder I do not have. It has been a little over a month since I lost my job, and a lot has happened since then. I needed time to calm down and let things unfold before writing this, because the emotional whiplash has been intense. Some days I feel empowered, and other days I feel completely drained. What I can say for sure is that this situation was bigger than I realized at first. The week after I was fired, I officially retained the employment lawyer I mentioned before. Thomas reviewed all my paperwork, my termination notice, and the notes I had kept about the comments and meetings. He immediately told me to stop doubting myself. He said what my employer did was not normal concern and crossed into discrimination territory. Hearing a professional say that made me cry in his office because I had started to gaslight myself into thinking maybe I was being difficult or insensitive. Thomas sent a formal demand letter to my former employer outlining potential violations. He cited discrimination based on a perceived disability, invasion of privacy, and creation of a hostile work environment. I did not even know perceived disability was a legal concept until this happened. Apparently, you do not need to actually have a condition for protections to apply. That alone was validating in a way I cannot fully describe. About 2 weeks later, HR reached out to me directly. This time the tone was very different. Lisa was no longer speaking slowly or cautiously. She sounded nervous. She asked if we could talk off the record. I declined and told her all communication needed to go through my lawyer. After that, my lawyer received a response offering a settlement discussion. We went back and forth for a while. They initially tried to frame the firing as performance-related, which was laughable considering my spotless record. Thomas shut that down quickly. Eventually, they admitted in writing that the decision was based on workplace concern about my health and the reactions of other employees. Seeing that in writing made my stomach turn, but it also strengthened my case. While all this was happening, I was also dealing with the personal fallout. I ran into a former coworker named Allison at the grocery store. She awkwardly told me people were shocked I was fired and that some thought I had gone to rehab. That rumor alone nearly broke me. I realized how damaging their assumptions had been, not just professionally, but socially. My reputation had been quietly trashed without me ever being given a chance to defend myself. The settlement talks eventually resulted in an agreement. I cannot share details, but I can say it included compensation and a neutral reference. More importantly to me, the company agreed to revise their HR policies around medical assumptions and employee boundaries. Knowing that something might change because of this makes the whole ordeal feel slightly less pointless. On the emotional side, I am still working through a lot. I started therapy not because I have an eating disorder, but because being constantly scrutinized messed with my head. My therapist, Rachel, helped me understand how workplace trauma can show up in unexpected ways. I had developed anxiety around eating in front of others and even bringing lunch to interviews. I am slowly getting past that. I have also started a new job at a smaller company with a much healthier culture. During onboarding, they talked about respecting boundaries and not commenting on bodies. I almost laughed when they said it because it felt surreal. I keep my head down, do my work, and eat my lunch in peace. That should not feel revolutionary, but after what I went through, it does. Looking back, I am still angry, but I am also clearer. What happened to me was not about food. It was about control, fear, and a workplace that thought it knew better than an adult employee about her own body. I trusted my instincts, and I am glad I did. If I had accepted their version of reality, I would have carried a label that was never mine. I am sharing this update for anyone who might be in a similar situation. Concern can quickly become discrimination when it is based on assumptions and gossip instead of facts. You are allowed to exist in your body without explanation. You are allowed to eat how you choose. Stories number 10. My mom keeps surprising me with my strange dad and says I'm being dramatic for leaving. I don't know how many times I can go through the same emotional ambush before I completely shut down. I'm writing this because I feel like I'm losing my grip on what's reasonable and what isn't, and everyone around me keeps telling me I'm overreacting. I'm a 29-year-old woman living in California. I work full-time in healthcare, and my job already takes a lot out of me emotionally. My parents divorced when I was 14. The divorce itself was messy, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was my dad, Mark. After the divorce, he didn't just leave the marriage, he checked out of being a parent. He missed birthdays, graduations, holidays, and years of my life. When he did reach out, it was usually to make excuses or to guilt me for being distant. By the time I was in my early 20s, I stopped responding altogether. It wasn't a dramatic decision. It was quiet and necessary. Every interaction with him left me anxious, angry, or hollow. After a lot of therapy, I decided no contact was the healthiest choice for me. I told my mom, Susan, about this clearly. I explained that I wasn't doing it to punish him, but to protect myself. At first, she said she understood. She told me she supported me and that she wouldn't push. I believed her. About a year ago, things started to change. My mom began inviting me over more often. Dinner, birthdays, random Sunday visits. I thought she just wanted to spend time together. The first time it happened, I walked into her house and my dad was sitting at the kitchen table like he had every right to be there. I froze. My mom acted like it was no big deal. She said she thought it would be nice for us to all be together. I left immediately. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I just said I couldn't do this and walked out. Later that night, my mom texted me saying I embarrassed her and that I could have at least been polite. I reminded her of my boundary. She apologized, said she didn't think it would affect me that much, and promised it wouldn't happen again. It did. Since then, it's happened 4 more times. Once on my birthday, once at a small family barbecue, once when I stopped by to drop off groceries she asked for. Every time, my dad was already there. Every time, my mom acted surprised that I was upset. She keeps saying things like she hoped I'd grown out of it, or that she thought enough time had passed. Each time I leave, I feel sick to my stomach, my chest tight, my hands shaking as I get in my car. I don't feel safe or respected, and each time, my mom calls or texts afterward, telling me I'm being dramatic, that I can't keep running away forever, and that I'm breaking her heart by refusing to be in the same room as my own father. The last incident was the worst. She invited me over for what she said was just the 2 of us having dinner. I even asked directly if my dad would be there. She said no. I trusted her. When I arrived, his car was in the driveway. I didn't even go inside. I turned around and left. I got 3 calls from my mom on the drive home. When I finally answered, she was furious. She said I didn't even give him a chance and that I was acting like a child. She said he's trying now and that I need to meet him halfway. I told her she lied to me. She said she didn't lie, she just didn't want me to back out. That sentence hit me harder than anything else. She knowingly tricked me into a situation she knew would hurt me, and somehow I'm the problem. She told me family doesn't work like this and that one day I'll regret being so stubborn. I told her I regret being put in these situations over and over after making myself clear. Now she's barely speaking to me. When she does, it's cold and guilt-filled. She tells other relatives that I walk out on family gatherings and refuse to forgive. A few aunts have reached out saying I should just sit through one dinner and be the bigger person. I feel like no one is listening to what I'm actually saying. I'm not asking her to choose sides. I'm asking her to stop forcing me into contact with someone who caused real harm by his absence and his behavior. I'm asking for honesty and respect. Instead, I'm being told I'm dramatic, unforgiving, and selfish. I'm starting to wonder if I'm wrong for continuing to leave when this happens, or if staying would just teach everyone that my boundaries don't matter. I don't want to lose my relationship with my mom. But I also can't keep sacrificing my mental health to make everyone else more comfortable. I'm exhausted from bracing myself every time she invites me over, wondering if my dad will be there like a trap I didn't see coming. I don't know how to make her understand that surprise reunions aren't healing. They're traumatic. And I don't know how many more times I can walk away before there's nothing left to salvage. Update. My mom keeps surprising me with my estranged dad and says I'm being dramatic for leaving. A lot has happened since I wrote this, and I'm still emotionally worn down. But I feel like I owe an update because things escalated in ways I didn't expect. After the last incident, I stopped going to my mom's house entirely. I didn't announce it or make a big statement. I just declined invitations and kept conversations short. That alone seemed to upset her more than any argument ever did. She kept asking why I was being distant, and I finally told her the truth. I said I no longer trusted her to respect my boundaries, and that until that changed, I wasn't comfortable visiting. She didn't take that well. She accused me of punishing her for trying to fix the family. She said she felt stuck in the middle and that I was making her choose. I told her she already chose every time she lied to me and put me in those situations. That conversation ended with her crying and telling me she didn't recognize who I'd become. A few days later, I got a long message from my dad. I hadn't given him my number. My mom did. He wrote about how much he regretted the past and how he just wanted a chance to explain himself. He said life was short and that holding on to anger only hurt me in the end. Reading that message made my hands shake. It felt like being dragged backward into something I worked hard to leave. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my mom and asked her why she gave him my number without asking. She said she thought it might help. She said I should at least hear him out. I told her that giving out my contact information without consent crossed a serious line. She said I was overreacting again. That word keeps coming up. Overreacting, dramatic, sensitive. It's like my emotional reality only exists if it's convenient for everyone else. Things came to a head last weekend. My mom invited me to a family brunch at a restaurant. She promised my dad wouldn't be there. I hesitated, but agreed on the condition that if he showed up, I would leave immediately and that would be on her. She agreed. I arrived early. 10 minutes later, my dad walked in. I didn't freeze this time. I stood up, put some cash on the table for my coffee, and walked out. I didn't look at him. I didn't say a word. My mom followed me outside and started yelling in the parking lot. She said I humiliated her. She said everyone was staring. I told her quietly that she lied again and that I was done. I drove home shaking, but also strangely calm. Something clicked for me in that moment. I realized this wasn't about reconciliation. This was about control. She kept forcing these encounters because she believed she knew better than I did what I needed. Later that night, I sent her a message spelling things out clearly. I told her I am no contact with my dad by choice. I told her any attempt to surprise me with him, share my information with him, or manipulate me into seeing him will result in less contact with her. Not as punishment, but as protection. She didn't respond for 2 days. When she did, it was short. She said she felt like she was losing her family and that she hoped I'd come around someday. No apology, no acknowledgement of the lies. I've since blocked my dad's number. I've also stopped sharing details of my life with my mom that could be passed along. That part hurts more than I expected. I miss the version of my mom who made me feel safe. I'm grieving that relationship while she's still alive. Some relatives have backed off after hearing more of the truth. Others still think I'm being stubborn. I'm learning to live with that. I can't keep lighting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. I don't know what the future looks like with my mom. I hope we can rebuild something healthier, but only if she accepts that my boundaries aren't negotiable. For the first time, I'm choosing to trust myself instead of the guilt. My mom keeps surprising me with my estranged dad and says I'm being dramatic for leaving.